Hey guys, it's Amber. A few of my crafty friends have embarked on a new endeavor with Maker Forte. So I am featuring their brand new Kaleidoscope Powders, and Alex Syberia, one of my good friends, has a brand new photopolymer stamp line over at Maker Forte. I'm so excited to share this with you. So I have two of the Kaleidoscope Powders to share. I have Neptune and Aurora. I have some Slimline envelopes, and then I have the Christmas Rose stamp set designed by Alex Syberia. The florals are beautiful, and one of my favorite things is I could stamp the leaves without having to do any masking. I noticed that there wasn't a label on these powders, and before I threw this other packaging away, I went ahead and used an IdentiPen, which is a permanent pen, and I'm just going to put the names on them. The white one is called Neptune, and that's because once you wet it and use it on a project, it actually color shifts to a beautiful sea green. And then the other one is Aurora, and that shifts from almost a brown or a rosy color to a violet, which is gorgeous. And you'll be able to see that in the final photos. Here I have the Tropical Sorbet number 10 envelope. So these are slimline envelopes, and they are self-adhesive. You just pull off the backing and go ahead and seal your envelope. These also have a metallic pearlized shine to them, which is just gorgeous. So I'm going to create a matching envelope for this card today. I'll stamp my images in Obsidian Pigment ink because it is a waterproof ink, and I had a scrap of watercolor paper. So this is a 7.5 by 2.5 inch piece of watercolor paper. So I'm just going to mat it so that I can use it for a slimline card, but I have all these scraps of watercolor paper laying around. I figure I should go ahead and use them. This is Saunders Waterford Cold Press High White paper, and I have a link to the supplies list down below. I've started to mix and swatch my Daniel Smith watercolors, and I pulled this out to choose my colors for my project. So these are all the colors mixed with Quinardone Rose. I decided that I really like the Hansa Yellow that I'm pointing out on the left. For my next color, I decided on Pyrrole Orange. And again, all of these swatches that you see here are my 28 colors in my watercolor palette that you see up there, mixed with Quinardone Rose. For my third color, I chose Serpentine. I thought that was a beautiful neutralized, almost like a coral color. I thought that was really pretty. I'll prepare my Daniel Smith watercolors by re-wetting them with a mini mister. These watercolors are tube paints that I put into this pocket palette with 28 mini pans. So I'm going to go ahead and mix my colors. The palette that I'm using is actually the lid of my 21 pan palette, or 21 well palette rather. And again, I'll have that link down below. So I'm just putting a couple different areas of Quinardone Rose, and I'm going to mix those colors that I pointed out earlier with those. So starting off with the Pyrrole Orange, and this is going to create a really vivid coral. I wanted to have a good mix of bright colors along with neutralized colors. So to create that neutralized coral, I'll mix Quinardone Rose with Serpentine Genuine. Because green is the complement to red, it neutralizes the Quinardone Rose and creates this muted coral tone, which I think is just gorgeous. For the next color, I'll use Hansa Yellow Light. Now, Hansa Yellow Light is a very cool, vibrant yellow. That mixed with Quinardone Rose, which is also a cool color, is going to give you a really bright mixture. And so I have the two bright tones and then the muted neutralized Serpentine mixture. Okay, we're ready to paint, and so my favorite type of watercolor is wet on wet technique. So my brush is wet with mostly clean water. You can tell it's a little bit yellow, and I'm going to drop in that Quinardone Rose and Hansa Yellow Light mixture. I'm just moving the color around and making sure that I'm leaving a little bit of highlight here and there with no real rhyme or reason. I'm not really considering a light source. So before this first layer dries, I want to come in with my second layer of color. And for that, I'm going to use the Quinardone Rose and Serpentine Genuine mixture. So that kind of muted, neutralized color. And I'm going to put that at the base of the petal. That's going to create my shadows. This color is going to coordinate really well with the Kaleidoscope powder that I'm going to use on these blooms. For the third layer, I'm going to brighten it up, add a little bit of color variance with the Quinardone Rose and Pyrrole Orange mixture. And I'll use the Pyrrole Orange mixture underneath the fold of the petals just to add some shadow underneath there, but still keep the tip of the petals bright. So here I have the Maker Forte Kaleidoscope Powder. This is Neptune, so this is similar to Perfect Pearls. Now the color of this is going to have a green, almost seafoam green sheen to it. And so I'm going to use the white or the Neptune color on the leaves. For the Aurora powder, this is closer to that Serpentine mixture that I have up top. So I'm going to be using this on the base of the petals to add sparkle and shine and a little more interest to those blooms. So I'm just using the end of my watercolor brush just to take a little bit out and put it on the palette. And I'll make sure I close these. It's a super fine powder, so you don't want to accidentally knock it over or blow on it and have it go everywhere. So close up your containers. I've switched to a number 2 round brush. The one I was using before was a number 8 round brush. And I'm just going to add a little of this Aurora Kaleidoscope powder to the base of my petals here. So this is going to add, it's going to deepen up the shadows a little bit more, but the sheen of this is incredible. And I wasn't able to capture it very well in the video, so I'm going to show you the final photo. I was able to get it with the photo shots much better than I was in the video. Isn't that gorgeous? So in this light, it almost looks terracotta, but later in the video, you're going to see it shift to that violet color, depending on how you hold the card. Okay, so now I need to pick the green for my leaves. So here I have all of my Daniel Smith watercolors mixed with Parylene green. I'm pointing out Serpentine Genuine, which I really like. I'm comparing that to my composition that I have already. And I also like the Naples yellow. In the end, I only end up mixing and using the Naples yellow mixture. So here I have Naples yellow, and I'm going to add Parylene green with it. Parylene green is a really, really strong color, and Naples yellow has a very low tinting strength. So they're kind of like the opposites with tinting strength. So you have to be really careful when you're mixing 2 colors like this, because the green can overtake the yellow really easily. So you can see when I'm adding the Parylene green, I kind of add just a little bit off to the side and mix it in slowly until I get to the color that I want. A lot of times what I'll do too is I'll have a little bit of the lighter color over to the left and then leave some of that darker color to the right so that I can pick and choose and have lighter colors for highlights and darker colors for shadows. So I'm just filling in all of the leaf here with the lighter mixture, and then I'll drop in that darker Parylene green for my shadows. I almost add the Aurora Kaleidoscope powder to this and then realize that the Neptune powder, which I haven't hydrated yet, I just added a little bit of water to it, has a green sheen to it. So I'm going to go ahead and mix that, and I'll drop that into the flower. Now, because this mixture doesn't have any pigment in it, it starts to kind of bleach out the leaf a little bit. So I decide to just mix that powder directly with my paint mixture, and I'll apply it that way instead. So because this Neptune powder is going to be more diluted, not only with the water that I added to it, but also the paint, it's not going to be as visible in the photos or on video when I show you this shine, but it definitely does have a beautiful shimmer to it. So I'll add back in a little bit of my shadows because I lost some of that. And I'll take some of that Parylene green directly from the pan. But again, it's a super strong color, so I need to be careful with that. I'll try and show a little of the shimmer here, but you're going to see it better in a clip just a little bit later on. I'll speed up the rest of the painting with a little bit of music on, and I'll be back in a moment. If you want to fast forward, go to 10 minutes, 23 seconds. Okay, so it's time for some splatter, and for that I'm going to use the Kaleidoscope Aurora powder because it's just so dang gorgeous. There are tons of colors of this Kaleidoscope powder, so be sure to check that out on the Maker Forte website. And after I splatter this, I realize I haven't painted the center of the flowers. So I go in with the same green mixture that I used for the leaves, but in addition to that, I add a little bit of Amazonite Genuine, which is a teal color, because I realized I needed a little bit of teal on this card if it was going to match my envelope. Now this was just a scrap of watercolor paper, so I'm going to mat it with a piece of STARDREAM metallic gold cardstock, and then I'll go ahead and put that onto the card base. A slimline card for me is usually 8.5 by 3.5, so my original watercolor paper was 7.5 by 2.5. So I'll just get that glued down, and I didn't pop anything up. I didn't feel like it was necessary. I just kept everything flat. And here's the finished card. Now that the powders are completely dry, look at that. Look how gorgeous that is. You see that violet color shift? It's so, so pretty, and you can see a little bit of that green sparkle on the leaves there as well, and to the centers of the flowers. That's also on the centers. Just gorgeous, you guys. So for my envelope, of course, this envelope has sheen on it. So what I would recommend is that you use a STAZON ink instead of the pigment ink that I'm using here. This ink took 100 years to dry because it's a pigment ink. It kind of sits on the surface. And also because this is a metallic envelope. So the pigment ink doesn't have a chance to absorb it all. It just took a really long time to dry. So I would use a STAZON ink instead. Here's the finished card. I hope that you guys enjoyed this Slimline watercolor card today. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm guest designing for Maker Forte again next week, so hit that subscribe button and notification bell so that you don't miss this card that I'll be sharing next week. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again soon.